Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and while we wait for one head of government to cement a political change of direction with the settlement of the Northern Ireland Protocol, thought I'd take a look at the contest to decide who should become another head of government, decide the future political path for Scotland. The three candidates for the SNP leadership have been decided. The winner, of course, will also become First Minister of Scotland. We will know the winner from in 1 month, today in fact, 27th of March, I think. But what are the pros and cons to each one? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So when I was discussing Sturgeon's shock resignation, see, I said at the time I wasn't sure if the SNP had like a rising star waiting in the wings to take over where she left off. You know, another canny political operator who could shed the baggage, you build baggage up over time as a political leader, and maintain the SNP's lofty position in Scottish politics. I think it's probably fair to say this is not the case. It is entirely possible that the eventual winner will grow into the role, but none of them are looking like the finished article now, and whoever wins looks like they're going to have three major challenges to deal with. The first is that from the outside, the contest does not appear as clean as it should be. The ideal situation for a political party choosing a new leader is for each contender to set out their stall, respectfully disagree with the others, and let the best candidate win. Then, when a winner is chosen, the party can unite behind their leader and move onwards. This does not seem to be occurring. Kate Forbes and Humza Yousaf have been slinging a bit of mud at each other. You know, Ash Regan has tried to steer out of it. That's the best thing I'll say about her. I'll come to her first, really. But Kate Forbes has, of course, created an argument about the role of religion in political decision-making. And although Humza Yousaf has addressed the issue in what I think is exactly the right way, nonetheless, various people in the SNP are attacking his honesty. So whoever wins will have to deal with fractures in the party that their opponents will absolutely poke at. Congratulations. The second challenge is that the SNP, we're always going to be facing a tougher time over the next couple of years anyway. The SNP rose to their position as the main party in Scottish politics in both Westminster and Holyrood, partly as a result of Labour losing their winning mentality. Labour massively took their eye off the ball and then got trapped with a poor focus on electoral realities for too long. But that is changing. Nobody is suggesting that Labour, of course, are going to reverse their long period of boobery overnight. But there was already the possibility that they were going to make some real gains at the next general election in Scotland, and that most of those gains would come at the cost of the SNP. You know, then they'd have an opportunity to prove themselves in government, potentially improve their standing at the following Holyrood and Westminster elections, and build from there. That was always going to be challenge enough with Sturgeon leading the party. Now they're going to get someone else, and without trying to be rude, someone inferior, at least for now. The new leader does not have very much time to establish themselves and win over the trust of voters, some of whom are already thinking about switching their support. And the third challenge, of course, is deciding the SNP's independence strategy. Sturgeon's plans used to be to use the next general election as a de facto referendum. Wasn't universally supported in the party, and it seems now there's a real push to choose a different direction. But what will that direction be? So those are the challenges. How do the contenders stand up? Well, as I say, I'll start off with the easiest first, Ash Regan. She is clearly the least suitable. The bookies don't rate her chances either, so it seems that she is considered the least suitable within the SNP as well. As far as the betting odds are concerned, it's a toss-up between Forbes and Yousaf, and Regan is nowhere. So what is her problem? Well, inside the SNP, there may be various factors putting people off, but looking at her from the outside, it boils down to the fact that she's useless. She's absolutely terrible at cross-examinations. You know, I've seen each candidate deal with a few interviews recently. And Regan is really awful. Maybe not quite Liz Truss levels of awful. Let's not go mad, but not very far off, if I'm honest. The most famous fail, there've been a few, was when she was asked about her strategy for independence. I may put a link in the description below. And it's an obvious question to ask of the candidates, and it is a tricky question. Like, I'd have been minded. I mean, she could have just said, she's got ideas, but she wants to find a consensus way forward via the conference, which was going to decide the matter anyway. That would be non-committal without showing an empty hand, I think. You can always get away with adopting a consensus approach in politics. It's democratic. It's hard to argue against it. But no, she said her strategy was to demonstrate the will of the Scottish people to the world and to Westminster, and the Westminster government will of course respect that. Now, personally, this is not an unrealistic position actually to adopt. If the SNP maintain their pressure, if nothing else works, by all means try other things, but if nothing else works, there has to come a time when Westminster supports another referendum. There has to. There comes a time when this once in a generation argument no longer works, because people will go, well, actually, it's a generation later now. But people are impatient and they want a quicker path. So she was asked what would happen. Well, the Westminster government, let's say they're not impressed with your argument. She said, well, I think they will be. To which she was then asked again, well, what if they don't? And she had no answer to that. Were I in the SNP and considering my choice, I would be concerned that Regan either has no clear direction in mind or is incredibly poor at communicating it. Maybe both. When the SNP is going to come under the most serious pressure it's faced since rising to prominence, I wouldn't even be considering her. But it also seems from the book is odds neither are most of the SNP. The best thing I can say about her is that she at least agrees with my point about the SNP mudslinging. She has not engaged, as far as I can tell, in the attacks on other candidates, simply disagreements, and has actually called for the debate to be more respectful. Humza Yousaf, on paper, would appear to be, to me, the most suitable. He's made it clear that he would not have his religious views informing political decisions. I think he's made it very, very clear, because he's come under a bit of attack, he's made it absolutely explicitly clear that he approves of gay marriage. And that, as I say, that's something the SNP have attacked, or some in the SNP have attacked him over. See, I first saw something from Craig Murray. Now, he's an advocate for independence, but not really SNP. So he was suggesting that Humza Yousaf deliberately arranged a government meeting years ago now in order to avoid the votes to approve of gay marriage, as if, oh, yeah, it's all right saying that, but he didn't want to vote for it, did he? Now, it may or may not be true. I don't know. The evidence was circumstantial. It's possible true. It's possibly not true. But the point is that Yousaf has explicitly backed the right for gay people to marry. That should surely put the issue to bed. If someone outside the SNP who is less interested in party unity wants to try and make an issue out of it, that's up to them. But it makes no sense for anyone inside the SNP to do so, and yet that's what they've been doing. If Yousaf wins, they've basically just fed the party's opponents with ammunition to use against them. His main problem seems to stem from his time as health secretary. Now, I actually thought he gave a good account of himself when he was interviewed about this, but it is an issue for him. Is he an ordinary administrator who could not rise to the challenge, in which case he will presumably struggle to optimise the SNP's campaign next year? Or was he just facing an incredibly challenging job at the worst possible time? Sometimes you can also think about the Churchill dimension as well. So Winston Churchill was actually really bad at every cabinet position he ever held in government. He was actually really bad at running government departments. It was very popular, but as an administrator, very bad. But then he turned out to be a brilliant prime minister at just the time we needed a brilliant prime minister. So different types of leadership there. The same could be true of any of the candidates that are standing here. They may or may not have shone in their previous roles. It doesn't mean to say they won't shine in what is actually a very different role as leader of the party and first minister of the government. But then we have Kate Forbes. So Forbes's camp are attacking Yousaf over, does he really support gay marriage? And Yousaf is attacking Forbes by saying that a first minister should not be bringing religion into politics. And that is actually quite right, but it's not necessarily the most helpful thing to say. Kate Forbes, first of all, her one major weakness aside, she actually does come across well in interviews. She seems accomplished. She has also been considered a competent minister, so she ticks a lot of boxes. The problem is her guiding principles. She has complained that people are making an issue of her religious beliefs. Nobody's making an issue of her religious beliefs. They're making an issue of the fact that she said it was right for her to use her religious beliefs to inform her political decision making. Because that's what people care about. Not her faith, what decisions she makes in government. And she has tied her religious views to those decisions, so that's down to her. She can't complain. You know, the following day, after the backlash, she doubled down. She has since tried to rein it back, but who's going to believe she's really changed her mind? You know, someone asked me in a stream recently, maybe yesterday, why it was that people wanted politicians to be guided by their values, why politicians feel when you say, well, my values are this, and yet hypocritically are against it when it turns out to be religious values. Now, if I were, I don't know, I'm not, but if I were to speculate, I would say it's probably because people arrive at secular values independently, or are perceived to. In reality, there's little independent about any of our values, which is why you have fundamentally different cultural values all around the world. But that is the perception. But religious values, they're not arrived at independently as you grow, as you mature, you know, other than your potentially independent decision to hold that faith. The values are laid down in a book that someone wrote or collected together long before any of us were born, in a different time. There is a natural mistrust of a politician basing their political decisions now on what were the teachings of someone who lived thousands of years ago. I mean, Tony Blair famously said he kept his faith. No one knew he was a Catholic till after he left office. He said he kept his faith secret because people think he'd be a bit mad. You know, people mistrust religious views in politics. You know, as a religious person myself, I wouldn't want a politician being guided by their faith in their job. Apart from anything else, a lot of most people's faith, especially in Christianity, has less to do with the words of prophets and more random gobshites from antiquity. For example, people are bringing up a statement from Forbes from years ago related to the book of Timothy, which said that women shouldn't teach. But the book of Timothy has nothing to do with Christianity. Timothy wasn't writing about what Jesus said or any other prophet. He was writing about what he believed. And some Herbert thought it was a good idea to put it in the same book as the Gospels. It's not religious scripture. Get rid of it. People want a politician to make decisions based on the here and now and what's best to make people's lives better. They don't really believe that anyone who lived 2,000 years ago knows better than people around today. And the SNP has won its current power base with a range of different voters in Scotland. You would think Forbes would be a massive turn-off to many of them. She's right-wing in a party which is mostly left. It's not exclusively because, you know, broad church with independents unifying them. So you do have some on the left and the right, but vast majority on the left. And she's on the right. She wants to inform decision-making with scripture, which many voters will not approve of. Jacob Rees-Mogg has written an article this weekend in support of Forbes. I mean, do the SNP really want a leader with Moggy's endorsement? So from the outside, you just look at it and you think, right, Yusuf looks the best bet. Regan's useless. Forbes lacks the tact needed to recognise that she represents an extreme wing of her party and she cannot lead from that position. So the party is in a different place to her, so she politically needs to move. She doesn't seem to understand that. So she will put off a lot of voters. Yusuf is the only one who seems to have any political awareness at all. But that doesn't mean he's politically competent, just that he's politically aware. He may find that he struggles to unify the party with some of the mud being slung around, as I say, some of it by him. And every slip-up may well be greeted by circling sharks. After all, south of the border, a different political party has shown that if you pick the wrong leader, you actually can get away with changing your mind really quickly. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.